What is going on, my beautiful people of YouTube? B-Side here, and it's been a while since I've made a video, and the reason why is because I am hooked, and I mean I'm hooked on Path of Exile 2. I hope everyone is having a beautiful holiday season, and now that the year is coming to an end and we have a few days before New Year's, it was time to make another guide. In this video, we're going to talk about what you could do to increase your chances as a warrior in Path of Exile 2. More in particular, for those who are beginning this game and struggling with this class. Disclaimer, I don't pretend to know everything about Path of Exile 2. I'm trying to learn the game as well. Maybe not at the pace of other streamers and YouTubers, because it's only early access and it's slowly working out the kinks in the end game, so I'm not too worried about it. I've played about 130 hours, experimenting and reading how passive notes affect whatever it is that you're trying to do with your warrior. I've tried so far Mace and Mace and Shield as a starter warrior, but I'm certain these tips will help you dual wield as well, since it's pretty much the same concept. I'm trying to make this as simple as possible so you can understand how stuff works in terms of character progression. Also, this is not a build guide, as I've only made it to cruel difficulty. I'm slowly taking my time for trial and error only. This is just a set of basic tips to help you better in figuring out the game. If by the end of this video, these tips helped you, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button for more content like this, as it helps me grow with the algorithm, since I'm gonna be sharing the knowledge that I've gathered from this class, as well as show you my progress with the warrior that you see in the screen. Now let's begin. Understanding the warrior is the first tip that I'm gonna give you on how to survive as the warrior in Path of Exile 2. So far, since this is early access, the warrior class revolves around AoE, melee, and physical. You have only 4 styles you could use your warrior as, and that is one-handed weapon and shield, two-handed weapon and shield, two-handed, and finally dual wield. And dual wield works for both ways, one-handed and two-handed. We're gonna go to the passive board real quick, as I'm gonna show you guys. This is the warrior's passive board, and its starting point is right here. I know that there are many ways that you can take to make progress on your character, but always focus on the things that you benefit from in the build that you're using, or whatever it is style of fighting that you're using. Make sure that you actually put passive points into things that benefit your skill set or whatever skills you're using. For example, there are attacks that cover melee damage, and there's attacks that cover physical damage, or both. Or there are attacks that also cover attack skill damage. Whatever route you're gonna choose, always remember that damage percentage to weapons. As you can see here, I don't have any damage percentage on either one-handed weapons or two-handed weapons, because I'm using more of a shield style of skill set. So what I did was I went through this route, picked up a little bit of melee damage, since shield is actually melee damage, and grabbed this real quick. This increases stun buildup and gives you 10 strength automatically. Then you go over here and you get a 20% increased melee damage and a 40% increased melee damage against heavy stun enemies. It's very useful for melee and physical characters in this, whether it is two-handed, dual wield, or whatever it is that you're gonna choose. Make sure that your melee damage is increased. And then you go down over here, and since I'm gonna be using sword and shield, I'm gonna bring up my armor, because I'm not gonna make damage with my weapon. I'm gonna be making damage mostly with my shield and my melee skill set. So what I did was I went down through here and I only picked up the passives that really actually matter for the skill sets that I'm using. Like, for example, increased armor is one of the best passives that you can get, because armor, and I'm gonna talk about it later, armor is the #1 priority for warriors in terms of damage mitigation. There's evasion rating and blocking, but I'm gonna leave that for a little bit later. But anyways, this is the passive board, and this is the flow that I did. Since I'm shield, I do increased block chance. These notes give you very good increase in the beginning of the game. And I keep going over here, taking care of my stun threshold, which actually gives you the amount of damage you can take before you are staggered. And then what I did is I gave myself strength and I kept going into dexterity. Two-handed warriors. I cannot stress this enough. I started as a two-handed warrior, hands down in early release. Do not be afraid of using dexterity for accuracy, because by the time you reach Act 2, you won't be able to hit shit if you don't have any dexterity into your passives. Unless you actually go down this direction right here, which I'm going to show you, and pick up this skill, which is called Resolute Technique, in which your hits cannot be evaded. But there's a downside to that. You cannot make critical hit chance, or you can never deal any critical hits. So make sure that you're mindful of what you're doing with your build. If it's the two-handed route, you could go straight down, increase damage, right, with two-handed weapons, and keep going this way. Maybe choose some area of effect if you're doing AoE. Keep going down, enhance your war cries, make sure you recoup health and stuff like that. Pretty much what everybody in two-handed is doing, right? But if you're choosing different styles of play, I suggest you stick to the passive notes that help you the most. And I know what people are gonna say, that warriors don't need dexterity, they all need just raw strength, because strength in this game increases your life and increases the ability to wear higher armor. But for a two-handed, you won't be able to dodge projectiles well if you don't have a shield. So you have to wear evasion rate items. Not many, because the warrior doesn't need many. He just needs either a piece of boots or a helmet that gives you a really high amount of evasion rating, and that should be enough to mitigate a lot of the damage in Act 1. So I'm going to show you guys real quick what I did during the beginning of the game, just as an example. You know, you can follow this through or you don't have to. It depends on the level of struggle that you want to go through, but to make it easier for you, here's what I did. I either picked a piece of helmet, or I picked some boots that had evasion. Where are they? I think I sold them, but I had like 145 evasion on it. If you have dexterity in your passives, it opens a window of wearing different armor that might have different stats that benefit you for now. You can dump it up later, but for now you can actually put some dexterity as you progress through your character. Once you feel comfortable, then you can take all the dexterity off and go all full strength. But for now, for progressing your character, I suggest you use dexterity, because it goes in par with evasion rating, which I'm going to talk about in a few minutes. So I found the boots. I found these in the beginning of Act 2, and I used them all the way to almost the end of Act 3. From another character that I deleted. You know, I ran out of money, I ran out of like things. I got stuck in the character and I deleted it, and then I started another one over with carrying over all the stuff that he was wearing. So with this armor mixed up and this armor piece equipped, I had almost a 40% evasion rating percentage. And that is enough to avoid most of the projectiles that you cannot block. Let's talk about evasion rating for a minute. So evasion rating is the ability for you to avoid projectiles that you can't block. Like, for example, if you have a shield and sword, and you don't have any evasion. Yes, you can block projectiles, most of the projectiles, but some projectiles you won't be able to avoid and they will hit really hard. So be mindful of that. Also, evasion, remember when I told you that dexterity plays a very crucial part with evasion rating as well? Because dexterity gives you accuracy, which the accuracy works in par with evasion rating as well. As you can read here, I'm going to show you. You can read evasion. It says evasion grants a chance to avoid enemy strikes or projectiles. Exact chance of success also depends on attacker's accuracy. So if you have the higher amount of accuracy rating and you have evasion rating items into your character, you'll be able to avoid better the projectiles or strikes from enemies that you cannot block, making your character almost impenetrable to any hit if you wear armor with evasion and you're using a weapon and shield. For two-handed weapons, unless you swap the play style, you're gonna be stuck with evasion. So make sure you divide the armor and the evasion rating pretty well throughout the acts, and you shouldn't have any problems. Now, the second tip I wanted to give you guys is the most crucial part of this game, and that is resistances. Resistances are crucial not just for the warrior, but for every single class that you're building in this game. As a warrior, try to find and craft armor with resistances, dividing them evenly each piece of armor, including rings, amulets, and your belt. All elemental damage is mitigated with resistances, and the best thing about this game is that the percentage works really well, even if it's low percentage. I'm going to give you the best info anyone can give you as to what resistances are important throughout the acts. Here it goes. Act 1 is mainly cold, with some fire enemies along the way, so focus on getting cold as high as possible with some fire and lightning, but mainly cold to cheese the last boss of the act. So in Act 2 is mainly lightning and fire, it switches, with lightning being the priority throughout Act 2. Cold should be secondary in this act, but not zero. There's also a 10% resistance penalty in this act, so be mindful of that. In Act 3 is all of the above, plus they start giving you chaos resistance equipment throughout the act. Cruel difficulty is pretty much the same, but with further resistance penalties. I hope that in later patches they start dropping more chaos resistance loot in earlier instances. You do, but at the rate in which it can drop, it can vary between very early in the game, but not much percentage, or way past anything where you could need chaos resistance. There's a little bit of an imbalance with the loot drop still, but then again, they're still working with the game. This is early access. I don't expect too much, but for now, try to get by Act 3 all the resistances up so that you don't have any problems in cruel difficulty. And the last tip that I'm gonna give you guys today, build guides are not needed for progression. I cannot stress this enough. Build guides are for end game content only. Some build guides will show you progression, but they're not necessary as to what you want to do at the beginning. A lot of the build guides already have high level skill support gems, and you won't get those until much more later in the game. And the skill gem sockets drop every once in a blue moon, or at least where I have been. This game is pretty simple, but it takes a pretty good amount of time in learning progression in this game. There is nothing better than to learn through trial and error, especially in this game where you have so many options and so many combinations and multiple ways to satisfy people's playstyles. So I guess that's it for today in this video. Don't forget to like this video, leave a comment and subscribe. Again, I want to get the community feedback in this game as it helps me evolve my character, and what I learned through my progression, I will pass on. So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Peace out.